Just a little thing that some time ago, I guess a couple of years ago, Anand Giridharadas and Brianna Joy Gray both tried to do this thing where they could communicate with you as it were live, so you could sort of Zoom with them. And I believe both stopped doing it. Probably because they got really, really busy, and they're super, super important people in our landscape, and so I wouldn't want to take them away from their work. However, it was a feat of democracy. Anyway, so day after day now, I get messages from the Democratic Party now that Joe's dropped out. And I was getting many messages from him because I flirt with the Democratic Party, mostly because of the name and some of its history, and because I don't like the other chaps. But anyway, they should really engage with that possibility of opening up the town hall or the agora, and put their money where their mouth is when they talk about democracy, because democracy is about persuasion, it's not about voting. Right. After Pontiac's War, parentheses, rebellion, King George, remember that guy, the Third, issued the Royal Proclamation of 1763, declaring that all lands west of the Appalachian Mountains be off limits to colonial expansion, infuriating colonists George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, lest we forget, who said in the original unedited Declaration of Independence that the king, quote, had endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions, end quote. I had heard the Pontiac story in high school, Cambridge Pilot School in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the early 70s, an alternative high school housed in the top floor of part of what is now Cambridge Rindge and Latin School. The class was called a Native American History, taught by Dr. Nancy O'Connell. I'm sure she was a doctor, but I knew her as Nancy. What I had forgot, in the Treaty of Easton, Easton, 1758, the British and the colonists had agreed the land west of the Appalachians would be reserved for the native people, parentheses, to ensure their support in the French and Indian War, end parentheses. Once the French were gone, the British colonists broke the treaty, which in turn triggered Pontiac's rebellion, which in turn triggered King George, and which Pontiac's rebellion also involved acts we would now definitely call terrorism, and ticked off the founding fathers, who wanted no impediment to their dream of moving west and annihilating the people who lived there. To say the annihilation was intended would not be true, at least not in the polite salons of Virginia, but the nation had a superior civilization, that a superior civilization was in need of space, where poor and persecuted Europeans could be free and self-sufficient, at least was intended, whatever the unintended consequence, sort of like collateral damage, sort of like the idiots who say bad things happen in war. They do. It's war, but it is not an excuse for barbarism. The annihilation was inevitable, and that is the fault of the annihilators. So the lie was told, the lie we tell ourselves. The European culture and civilization, its priorities and values were not shared everywhere in the world, for 4 of the 7 continents, get this, before 1492 had come up with very different ways of life than we had. Including sub-Saharan Africa, it was more like 4.5 continents. Europe, Asia, and North Africa stuck together as they are. It seems came up with several but not dissimilar cultures: imperial, monarchic, militant, colonial. The rest did not. I heard the other day the problem with the Native American was that they would not assimilate. Probably, I don't know, Tim Snyder. But that's the problem. But when a people says assimilate, when a European says assimilate, they do not mean reciprocal. It is a one-way deal, as the late, great Dick Gregory said of the busing program, also part of my high school experience in the 70s. White children were not being bused to blackness. Fortunately, and with no state help, African American culture has influenced European America and even good old European culture massively. The assimilation was actually reciprocal, but never the intention. It looks good to me. It is America to me, but obviously not to many, many people. The model is still in the foundation and the founding documents. I think this is possibly the biggest mistake of history, at least since the agricultural revolution, that there was not a mutual learning, curiosity, and acceptance in the Christianizing West. I don't know why it happened. Up to that point, peoples of the earth seemed pretty curious about each other. Then came the one God people. Spilt milk. The reasons it did not happen are many, sad, deadly, and probably going to wipe us out, rub us out, as the Cheyenne might say. The righteousness of the Euro civilization and its uncompromising evangelical embrace of itself, its economic absolutes, and its fossil fuel addiction might have been mitigated, but no. So here we are. And don't deceive yourselves. Ben Franklin pointed out that whites kidnapped by natives went native much more than natives captured by whites, i.e. the other way around. Left to their own devices, the indigenous people's life might be the one for me and thee. Left to our own devices. This seems to be one among many smaller things that drive the monotheists to frenzy and bloodlust, this natural preference. I will leave the founders to their groupies, but for myself, yesterday as today, I draw a line at the genocidal, messianic genocide. They have zero to say to me, no matter their flowery narcissistic prose. Roy Casagranda is a great spirit. As far as I can tell, he is without doctrine either way, but his love of the human being makes him effortlessly critical of the Eurovision lie contest about history. Just musing today, he suggests that almost everything in the Americas, without Europe's influence, everything technological, was about 300 years behind the Euro-Asia North African blob, putting them at the moment of encounter 1500 AD at 1500 BC. I, being I, thought the milieu of the Age of Heroes in the ancient Near East, Gilgamesh and soon to be Homer. Roy and I will never know what might have developed out of the many civilizations of the Americas if left alone or tolerated. Would they now be technologically wheeled and imperial? Would the Aztecs or Inca have invaded everyone else? Just fanciful? Probably not. Progress and growth did not seem paramount. Harmony seemed important, and the Candiaronks of the Huron would need to be ignored, of course, or understood, like Elon Musk encountering Buddha. So my thought is a Sioux setting for a production of the Iliad, which is a story about merit. Ancient, the flawed and dubious king is challenged by his greatest warrior for pinching the warrior's spoils of war. I won her, he shouts. You didn't. The king says, as he has said for the next 3,000 years, I am king. What you earn is mine to be given out as I see fit. Then Achilles goes on strike. My civilization has spent roughly 3,000 years making Agamemnon right and telling me this is progress. We insist warriors are obedient. All of our whispery heroes obey, while Achilles is on strike. So it seems the assumption of our thinkers is that all good humans would naturally and eventually not just build BMWs, but aspire to drive the bloody things. That there is no way of knowing is not to say this is true. The evidence is mostly not on the side of the Eurovision lie contest, except in one crucial way. Its greatest achievement has undoubtedly created a society of addicts run by a class of pushers.